There are so many things outside of just weight loss that you must celebrate. I used to be obsessed with weighing as little as possible, and then I started thinking about Hello and welcome to another podcast on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Fit Minds Podcast, Coach Mariah Jean here. Very, very quick podcast today because I'm trying to cook my family dinner. My dinner family, yes, very good. My family dinner, I've got a cooked chook. I don't often have these, but I'm gonna, split this up across mine and my partner's, my fiance and my baby's meal. I've got some chickpea pasta, which I'm gonna add some pesto to. I need some more pesto, so I have no idea how I'm gonna make that appear out of nowhere. And then I've also got some veggies that I've pre-chopped here in my steamer, and I put the pasta underneath. That's my trick, is the pasta is, I'll just hold up to the camera, is in the pot. See, very smart. Okay, so I'm boiling the kettle at the moment. I better actually get that on, otherwise it won't cook. Very, very simple dinner. So today's podcast, guys, podcast episode is about, non-scale victories. Now, you guys are all talking always about losing weight and how fucking awesome it is, and it is awesome, don't get me wrong. Losing weight is awesome. It's something you should celebrate. However, especially as a woman, we don't always lose weight. Some weeks we plateau, some weeks we only lose a couple 100 grams, and sometimes if we only rely on weight loss as a measure of progress, we can get very disheartened very easily. So if your goal is fat loss, rest assured that you don't necessarily just have to lose weight. So the very first thing I'm going to recommend for you, God, that's loud. The very first thing that you need to be doing, that you're probably not doing, when you're on a fat loss journey, or a weight loss journey, is what you think it is, but it is a fat loss journey, is start taking your body measurements. So we talk about the smallest part of your waist, your hips, your thigh, your calf, your arm, your shoulders, which is the width all the way around your back, and basically you bring it around to the front, your chest, okay? So these are all the areas that you want to measure. You can do your glutes too if you really want to. The widest part of your glutes are all the way around. Take your measurements. Non-scale victories. Take your measurements, because trust me when I say, on some weeks you won't lose weight, but you will lose centimeters or inches depending on how you want to do it. So you will make progress in ways that you are not currently measuring. You need to make sure you're doing that. Also, make sure you get things like in-body scans or DEXA scans every 12 weeks. They will show your composition, such as increases in muscle mass if they have happened, and they will happen early on in your journey, especially if you haven't been doing resistance training for very long or you haven't done it before. Really important, it can show muscle mass increasing and body fat decreasing, which is the end goal. That's what you want, to have the beautiful silhouette and the hourglass shape. Non-scale victories on fat loss journeys look like things other than just your body weight. Things like your clothes fitting differently, because if your clothes are looser or they are just fitting better, and you can get into different clothing sizes, but maybe you're thinking, I haven't lost the amount of weight I think I should have lost. It's probably because you've gained muscle and you've lost body fat. This is why you need to take multiple different forms of measurements for your progress. Photos, weighing is just one, but your measuring tape, so you take measurements, DEXA scans or in-body scans every 12 weeks, how your clothes are fitting. So you've got multiple different things that are going to determine whether or not you're making progress, how you feel, on a day-to-day basis. You will even be able to physically feel that body fat is coming off, and sometimes it doesn't reflect on the scale, which can be frustrating, but also, how is it frustrating if you're seeing the change that you want to see, you're feeling the change that you want to feel, but you're not seeing it on the scale? Like, why are you so emotionally attached to a number that nobody else knows what's happening with except me and you, right? Or except Coach Chloe and me, or if you want to share it with the group chat, that's if you're a client. But if you're not a client, this is a really good tip. This is a great tip. So other non-scale victories, other than, for example, trying not to monitor too much of just weight loss progress, is going to be things like what other people notice as well. So for example, your family members, your partner, your kids, literally anyone that isn't you with your personal bias. My pasta's going to bloody boil over, of course it is. So what we don't want to be doing is feeding this personal bias that if I don't lose weight, then I'm a failure, right? That I'm not enough, that I haven't done enough. And that is not true. That is a lie that you keep telling yourself. especially if you've been on point with everything. Literally, stop being so emotional. Have you been ticking the boxes? Have you been hitting your step count? Yes, awesome. Have you been following a meal plan? Yes, awesome. If the answer is, mostly, or been mostly consistent, or I've been pretty good, fuck off. You're not been fucking consistent. Your meal plan hasn't been on point. You need to nail your nutrition to get results. That is just how it is. Just bite the bullet, get it done, stop fucking around. If you can't nail your nutrition, calories might be too low, your food volume may not be enough, you may not be eating enough, okay? Or your calories, yes, may be too high, but most of the time they're too low or your volume is not there, so you're snacking on extra shit and you're not eating what you need to be eating to support your goals. So hopefully all of this makes sense so far and I haven't lost you just yet. So the next things we need to consider, fuck this, I'm gonna change the bloody, what am I doing? I'm gonna change the stove that I put this on because, there we go, this one is too aggressive. There we go, that's better. All right guys, sorry, bit of a detour. The other one's just too aggressive. All right, so, are you hitting your step count? Yes. Are you following your meal plan? Those fucking two first questions, if you're not doing those, don't whinge about the fact that your weight hasn't dropped or you can't see progress. Finished, right? If you've been missing exercise sessions, probably less relevant, depending on how far you are in your exercise journey. It doesn't really have a major influence, but that's going to be a massive thing, is meals, steps, meals and steps, meals and steps. If you've been snacking extra, having little licks and bites, extra snacks here and there, not measuring your food properly, that's the problem. If you haven't been hitting your step count, that's the problem, okay? So, other non-scale victories, other than measurements, photos, when you're on a fat loss journey, if you're not on a fat loss journey, performance, how well you're doing in the gym, even if you are on a fat loss journey, your strength, right? Seeing new lines in different places, actually being able to run for a certain distance if you're a runner or you like running, being able to get a certain time, focus on the performance benefits of eating well. Energy, feeling better about yourself, feeling more confident, having more energy, better digestion, right? The list goes on. Being able to concentrate at work, getting a promotion, all the stuff that food actually influences in your life that you don't even think about. Okay, better libido, better relationship with your partner, not snapping at your kids, the list goes on. You have to actually understand that on the weeks where things don't change on the scale, and they will happen, especially in the week before your period and the week of your period, if you're a current client, you get it. Weight usually plateaus or you don't drop as much as you usually would, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but then you have a big whoosh after your period is over. And sometimes in those times, you actually have to focus on non-scale victories in order to get your motivation and drive through those periods where you don't then become addicted to a number instead of actual progress that's happening in the rest of your life, as well as a fat loss that's happening in the background of that fluid gain that you've had, right? If you understand the maths, minus 1.5 to 2 kilos of fluid that you gain in the week before your period, if you take that off your weight, then that's probably what you do weigh. And sometimes you can celebrate that because it might actually look like a net loss, okay? But you need to actually know how to do basic math. Other than that, it's going to be the other factors in your life. The fact that you're more organized, the fact that you have better connections and friendships now, the fact that you feel more confident to go to the gym. There are just so many more things to consider other than just your scale weight, which will tie you through these months or weeks where you might have little lulls, or maybe you're not exactly at your end goal yet. Maybe you've hit a little bit of it, but you haven't hit the whole big goal. Maybe you feel like it's not going as quickly as you want it to and you're in a rush, which for whatever reason shouldn't be the case. And if you haven't already, listen to stuff that I've talked about on what rate of loss you should be losing weight, how quickly you should be losing weight. It's around 1% at the most, really, per week, 0.5%, between 0.5 and 1%. But around those weeks when you're due for your period, when you're on your period, that won't reflect. That won't even apply. You will often plateau or decrease a little bit, or you might even increase. So this is where scale weight, non-scale victories need to come into practice. There are many other non-scale victories, such as getting a wider variety of nutrients. Things like your inflammatory conditions, immune conditions are under control. You know, your bloods are really good. Go and get your health checked. Your hormones, your fertility, you know, the fact that you now have a regular menstrual cycle. Like, there are just so many things outside of healthier hair, healthier skin, healthier nails. Yes? There are so many things outside of just weight loss that you must celebrate, right? You must celebrate. Concentration to be able to study if you're studying currently, which obviously is impacted by poor nutrition. There are so many components of your life that are going to be important to you rather than that number that you've been obsessed with for, say, 20, 30 years, right? Maybe even longer if you're older, right? But I don't really think a lot about my weight anymore. I kind of use it as a piece of data because obviously, like, I'm at a point where I'm really happy with how I look, right? And so I used to be obsessed with weighing as little as possible. And then I started thinking about, how do my clothes fit? How do I feel? How is my confidence? How is my digestion? Especially through different phases of the month. Looking at having goals outside of weight loss that actually give you a self-esteem that isn't reliant upon that number when it doesn't go in the direction that you want it to go in. And if it doesn't, always reflect on, well, hold on, am I following the plan? Am I following the plan? Like, keep asking yourself, am I following the plan? Consistency looks like being a lot more consistent than you realize, especially with your food and your steps. Exercise, fuck it. If you miss a couple sessions, if there's something you can miss, it's exercise for a fat loss goal. If it's for strength or performance, well, then exercise is probably one of the more important ones, okay? And your steps really aren't, but your food and your exercise are gonna be important. Steps, meh. If you're performing and you're trying to run, you're trying to get stronger, you're trying to do high rocks, you're trying to do something that's extreme or different or challenging, then in that case, performance-based goals will be more important than your fat loss goals. And that often happens, and it's important for you to switch from, purely weight-based to performance goals, or be able to incorporate performance goals and celebrating performance in with those other factors, the weight loss factors, so that you can keep going and keep the motivation going. But that's pretty much it. The podcast is really fucking simple, honestly, like non-scale victories. And I think, honestly, what helps with non-scale victories is to celebrate them vocally. So things like in our group chat, we often get it with our ladies. My clothes are fitting better, I'm buying new bras, blah, 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 blah. My performance is better, my strength is better in the gym, I can run further, I've got more energy, I'm not cranky, menopause isn't as hard for me, pregnancy isn't as hard for me, I feel, more confident than ever. So this is the stuff that you need to celebrate. Now, I'm gonna finish up. That's probably one of the fastest podcasts I've ever done in my life. But I need to finish dinner. My family is here. I'm going to stop and say hello to them. Thank you very much. Looking forward to doing another podcast for you soon. Bye-bye.